The surgery wasn't as painful as I had anticipated. I woke up in an uncomfortable hospital bed, covered in cheap, scratchy sheets, and almost immediately began running my fingers across the bumpy sutures on the back of my head. The incision was smaller than I had anticipated. It couldn't have been more than an inch or so, just above the nape of my neck. "Stop touching it!" scolded Dr. Adams. I hadn't noticed him standing across from me, just on the other side of the bed. His sterile white coat was well camouflaged against the walls of the sterile white room. I jumped at the sudden interjection, which caused my head to pulse. Distracted by my now throbbing skull, and by the lingering effects of the anesthesia, I didn't realize he had continued speaking. "Do you understand what I'm telling you, John?" asked Dr. Adams, though I could tell by the tone of his voice that he was aware I hadn't heard a single word he had said to me. I stared at him blankly, occasionally blinking my eyes a little too hard as I adjusted to the bright fluorescent light. He sighed. "It'll take a few days for your brain to adjust to the implant. Don't panic when it doesn't work right away, okay? John?" I nodded. He seemed satisfied with this response. "Good. The world might look a little fuzzy to you for a day or two. Once your brain accepts the implant, which it will, the implant will learn to process visual inputs and produce appropriate and accurate outputs. Sound good?" Again, I nodded, trying my best to look invested in what he was saying. "I will continue to follow up with you every other week for the next 3 months. A nurse will come by soon to discharge you." To punctuate the discussion, he thrust a vial of pain medication into the palm of my hand and instructed me to take 2 pills every 8 to 12 hours as needed. I nodded again, struggling to absorb the information he had just spewed in my direction. "Take a pill every other week for 3 months. A nurse will stop by in 8 to 12 hours as needed." "Thank you, Doctor." His white coat fluttered behind him as the door snapped shut in his wake. Alone, and with nothing to do but wait, I absent-mindedly began picking at the bandage covering the IV on the back of my hand. The edges of the bandage seemed to blend in with the surrounding skin. Or maybe it just appeared that way because my vision was blurred. I ripped the bandage off and tossed it onto the small table beside the bed. Glancing down at the needle protruding from my skin, a small black rectangle appeared before me, seemingly suspended in midair, with a thin black line pointing toward the IV site. I squeezed my eyes shut, unsure if the rectangle was a product of the implant or just a medication-induced hallucination. Upon opening my eyes, the rectangle remained unchanged, except it now contained a sentence appearing in bold white letters. "Puncture wound. Expected to heal in 3 to 5 days." No sooner had I finished reading the sentence than it disappeared entirely. I focused again on the IV, squinting my eyes and straining my tired brain in an attempt to make the rectangle reappear, but no amount of wiggling, grunting, or blinking brought it back. I turned instead to the vase full of pink flowers on the windowsill. Taking a deep breath, I focused my eyes on the glass container, hoping to produce another blurb of information. Nothing. What was it he had said? Something about accurate inputs and fuzzy outputs? Or maybe it was appropriate inputs and visual outputs. It hurt to remember. A nurse burst through the doorway. The force of her entrance sent the door crashing into the adjacent wall, producing a thunderous noise that ricocheted throughout the mostly empty room. Before I could blink, she was standing at the bedside removing clamps, wires, and tubes from my chest and abdomen. For every wire she unhooked, a machine by the bedside was rendered silent, though I hadn't noticed the beeping and whirring until it stopped. She removed the IV from my hand. "All right, you're free to go." I appreciated how blunt she was compared to Dr. Adams. She called me a taxi, and in minutes, I was out the door and headed home to recover. Sleep came fast. Almost as soon as I'd entered my bedroom, I was snoring between the sheets. But I did not dream. Hours passed, or maybe days. The The blackout curtains pulled across the windows obscured any hint of sunshine and made every minute in my bedroom feel like the dead of night. Upon waking, my eyes were met with a monochromatic darkness in contrast with 3 large bright numbers and 2 letters. 8:45 a.m. The sight was startling, but not unwelcome. It was a relief to know that the implant was working and capable of producing useful information, though it would certainly take some getting used to. The incision site stung and my skull throbbed in rhythm with my heartbeat. My limbs felt heavy, less so than they had at the hospital, but certainly not as limber as usual. Perhaps a cup of coffee would stave off the struggling anesthesia. The dull thrum of pain in my skull continued as the coffee machine slowly dripped liquid into the glass pitcher below. I grabbed the oat milk from the refrigerator and noticed that the container was a little light. A thin ribbon appeared at the base of my vision, on which scrolled the details and particulars of a competitor brand of oat milk. Oatmax Creamy Oat Milk, half the price and half the calories of the next leading brand, with twice the flavor. Buy now at your local retailer for 20% off. Sale price valid this week only. My coffee has always tasted just fine with Best Value oat milk, and I had no intention of purchasing another brand, even if the implant suggested it. I waved my hand in front of my face, attempting to dismiss the ribbon in much the same way I would redirect smoke from the end of a stranger's cigarette. It made no difference. The words continued to appear and disappear at the base of my vision, passing in and out of my periphery over and over again. Your local retailer for 20% off. Sale price valid this week only. Oatmax Creamy Oat Milk, half the price and half the calories of the next leading brand, with twice the flavor. Buy now. A glitch, I thought, as I nestled into my couch. Dr. Adams had warned me that there may be a bit of an adjustment period following surgery. Still, I better mention this at my next appointment. It was to be a long afternoon of doing absolutely nothing, but occasionally fitting a piece or two of a puzzle together. I couldn't focus to read, and the light from the television strained my sore head. I ignored, or attempted to ignore, the ribbon of text. The clock on the wall, tick, tick, ticked, as words disappeared and reappeared in my vision, occasionally changing from one blurb to another. Construction workers removing sidewalk across the street rode back and forth on jackhammers throughout the afternoon. I pulled a pillow over my head and squeezed it tightly over my ears to block as much of the noise as I possibly could, which wasn't much. Soundly noise-canceling headphones, read the text. Now available in 6 unique colors. Shop now for $149.99, online and in-store. Soundly noise-canceling headphones. Now available in 6... After a shower, I noticed a slightly red blemish on my forehead. No matter. I'd always been prone to the occasional outbreak, particularly when stressed. Simply Skin Pimple Patches. New and improved, non-drying, hypoallergenic formula for reduced redness and inflammation. Fight acne with fast results. Available online or at your local drugstore. Simply Skin Pimple Patches. New and improved. The text was accompanied by a regular image of a woman with porcelain-smooth skin, placing a small circular patch over one barely perceptible bump on her cheek. The image obscured my own face in the mirror. I reached out my hand in front of me. It passed through the face of the woman and touched only the cold surface of the mirror behind it. The image dissipated, leaving me alone with my reflection. Inflammation. Fight acne with fast results. Available online or at your local drugstore. Simply Skin. The evening brought peace as the construction workers packed up their tools and headed home for some much-deserved quiet of their own. That night, I was restless in my bed. Sleep was fleeting. Shifting and wriggling atop my mattress, I dreamt of pimples and oat milk and headphones and jackhammers pounding on my skull. The next few days passed uneventfully. The clock ticked. The pattern of the sun through the window crept across the floor. The puzzle on the coffee table was more complete now than it had been. but only barely so. Napping was easy, but sleeping was hard. And as always, the line of text was there, inching along and along at the bottom of my world. And I tried to avoid reading the text. If I only looked up or into the middle distance, I could almost pretend that it wasn't there at all. Again, I made a mental note to ask Dr. Adams about the glitch. It was morning once again, 9:32 a.m. according to the implant. This morning marked the beginning of the 4th day spent cooped up in my apartment, and I was beginning to feel every moment of it. My head no longer throbbed, though I could still feel a dull ache if I thought about it too much. Some fresh air may do me well in my healing, and it would certainly be nice to stretch my legs for more than a few steps from bed to couch to kitchen. It seemed like ages since I'd spoken to or interacted with a human that wasn't some type of medical professional. The oat milk container was finally empty, and resting atop a pile of microwavable meal packages in my garbage can. I decided to visit the coffee shop around the corner and say hello to Emily. She's a pretty little thing, and she always remembers my order. Not that it's complicated. Peeking out the window, I noted gray clouds floating overhead. Text appeared just beyond the window with the daily weather forecast. Windy, with a 40% chance of thunderstorms in the next hour. Right. Better get going if I want to make it to the coffee shop before the storm. I threw on a coat, the green one that complements my eyes, or so says Emily, applied a spritz or two of cologne, and headed out the door into the windy world beyond. The construction workers were here again today, and the jackhammer sounded so much louder at this close a distance. I increased my pace to escape the incessant noise and rustling dust. Now available in 6 unique colors. Shop now for $149.99, online and in-store. Soundly noise canceled. The clouds grew ever darker, much more quickly than I had imagined they would. Thankfully, I was only a block or two away from the coffee shop. I could sit there and chat with Emily while I waited for the rain to pass. The street was busy this morning. Folks in business casual attire and raincoats walked past on their way to cars and buses. It was nice to be out and about again, feeling almost normal after so many days spent alone and in pain. A cool breeze blew across my face. Then, nothing. Just black. Completely silent and black. No passerby to watch or breeze to feel. This lasted for a moment before I saw him, and only a moment before I heard him. A tall, middle-aged man stood in the center of my vision, surrounded by multicolored flashing lights. He was speaking loudly, almost yelling, and waving his arms around to emphasize each individual word. Come on down to Crazy Eddie's Electronic Emporium, where we have high quality televisions, cell phones, and yes, even laptops for the low price of $599.99. That's right, folks, $599.99. Balloons floated up around him, each with a smiley face emblazoned on the front. Fireworks went off in the background, exploding in showers of red and blue sparks. The tall man continued to yell. Get the lowest prices of the season today, and today only at Crazy Eddie's Electronic Emporium! Words appeared just below his feet. Tax not included. No additional discounts or coupons applicable or accepted on sale-priced items. 0 APR for 3 months with successful application for store credit card. Crazy Eddie's Electronic Emporium, located off I-4 in Fairbanks in bright and sunny Central Florida. He flashed a wide grin and 2 thumbs up in my direction, before disappearing just as suddenly as he had appeared in the first place, taking the flashing lights and balloons with him. Crazy Eddie was gone, and I was left disorientated and slumping over on the sidewalk, my clothes soaked from the sudden onset of rain I hadn't seen nor heard. Oh my God, are you okay? Do you need help? Yelled a nearby woman, with a sense of urgency that rivaled my own. I must be worse off than I'd thought for her to be reacting that way. Help, I whispered, more to myself than anyone else, attempting to decide if I did indeed need help and what that help might even look like. At this, the implant blocked my view of the nice woman's shoes with a gray square menu labeled Help. A cold robotic voice read the menu options aloud, or as aloud as was possible for a voice that likely only existed within my own mind. To contact 911, say emergency. To contact Dr. Adams, say Dr. Adams. To close this menu, say close. To repeat these options, say repeat. None of these options seemed particularly helpful. Dr. Adams, I selected. The nice woman and an equally nice man, who I hadn't noticed until now, were pulling me to my feet by my armpits. I don't know who that is, sweetie, said the woman, as they led me to a nearby bench one shaky step at a time. The ringing of the phone was audible only in my conscience, yet it was loud enough to obscure the voices of the people near me on the street. Their warbled words registered only in the silence between each high-pitched ring as I waited for Dr. Adams to answer. No, he just collapsed on the sidewalk. I don't know. He said something about a doctor. Sir, can you tell me your name? Hello? The voice was solid and clear, as though we were standing together in the sterile white hospital room where we had last spoken. Dr. Adams, I said, words tumbling from my lips. The implant. I don't know what happened. I couldn't see anything or feel the rain or hear anyone around me. The whole world is just this one man. He was yelling about televisions and laptops and cell phones. The implant is broken. No, my dear lad, he responded. The implant is working precisely as intended. As a matter of fact, you must be healing splendidly for it to be working at full capacity already. The voice was chipper. I imagined he was smiling into a telephone receiver somewhere, wherever he was. The nice woman next to me was touching my shoulder. Her eyebrows were pulled tightly together, wrinkling her freckled forehead. Her lips were moving fast, but no sound came out. She was wearing red lipstick that looked quite nice against her pale face. John, can you hear me? I said the implant is working precisely as intended. Came the clear voice inside my brain, once again. He over-enunciated his words. No, that can't be, I explained. It's like these, I don't know what they are. Products, coupons, all the same. I can't make them stop. Well, yes, of course. We discussed this during your consultation, don't you remember? You selected the free trial option for your implant. My sodden clothes clung to my skin and sucked the warmth from my muscles. Shivering, I stood from the bench and ambled away from the crowd that had formed around me. Away from the woman with the red lipstick. Had I been heading south toward the corner store? Or north toward the coffee shop? I would like to see Emily today. She always remembered my order. Free trial option, I repeated to the street in front of me. A vague recollection floated into my subconscious. Perhaps this had been explained somewhere in the mountain of paperwork I'd signed before my procedure, but I couldn't recall. The weeks leading up to the operation now seemed vague, almost translucent in my memory. I'd hesitate to call them memories at all. Precisely. The advertisements will continue, but your brain will compensate to... Thank you, Dr. Adams. Goodbye. The click of a receiver sounded in my mind, followed immediately by the almost overwhelming cacophony of the busy street. People were talking loudly, over each other, all at once. The wheels of cars speeding by on the wet road created a constant whir. A car alarm blared in the distance. A baby was crying with a force and desperation that only the smallest lungs can manage. Rain beat a melody on metal roofs and canvas awnings. How had this discordant medley been replaced entirely by the voice of my surgeon? I'd have heard him less clearly were he standing on the street in front of me, talking against the cars and the people in the rain. Perhaps he was correct. The implant must be working as intended. My wet clothes weren't bothering me so much anymore, though I would certainly appreciate the feel of a hot beverage in my cold hands. My shuffling feet moved on toward the coffee shop, where a steamed vanilla latte and a warm smile would be waiting for me. But first, I think I'll stop by Crazy Eddie's Electronic Emporium. I hear they're having a sale.